Pastor Disick. I'm a member here at Suncrest as of last year. I'm also the pastoral ministry intern, and the reason I chose Suncrest is because of the inclusion statement. I really appreciate seeing people as their sacred worth, and welcome to the song.
We're in the midst of a series of messages called Covenant and Kingdom, the DNA of the Bible. So what we're doing is essentially a survey of the entire Bible, looking at the themes of covenant and kingdom, because in those two things, covenant and kingdom, the Old Testament and the New Testament find a place. So Pastor Matt and I are talking about covenant. Covenant is a significant thing in the Old Testament especially. And a covenant, a general definition, is that a covenant is a chosen relationship or a partnership in which two parties make a binding agreement, binding promises, and then they work toward the fulfillment of those promises, work toward a future, a common goal. That's what a covenant usually is. If you were able to listen to Pastor Matt's message last week, you will discover that in the Bible, however, covenant is a little bit different. Covenant is usually an agreement between two parties. And in the Bible, God's covenant with the people of God is pretty one-sided. God comes to Abram and says, I'm going to give you a land, I'm going to give you a family, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to bless others through you, and I'm going to give you a significant and a very special identity. Oh, and I will suffer and I will take the blame when you and your progeny screw it up. Deal? Abraham eventually says, okay, I don't know how you're going to do it, but that's a deal. That's the covenant that we see that God makes with Abraham and Sarah and the children of Israel. All right, to today's message. Back in 1997, a former executive with AT&T wrote a book. His name is Robert Greenleaf, and he wrote a book that is titled Servant Leadership, A Journey into the Nature of Legitimate Power and Greatness, 1977. And what he does in that book is he frankly criticizes modern day leadership that is based on authority. Authority where somebody's position just gives them some raw power. They might use anger, they might use criticism, ultimatums, etc. Those things are used to lead their organization or their business. And Greenleaf says in his book that servant leadership actually helps leaders find their true power and their moral authority. He says a servant leadership is the kind of person who will lead by listening, by caring. He uses even the word healing. A servant leader will help to heal. A servant leader will persuade. A servant leader will have a vision for where the organization needs to go and who they can be and become. And a servant leader will have foresight about dangers that are present or are coming down the road. A servant leader will help to build community among the organization and the staff. And the results are going to be healthier, wiser, freer, and more autonomous folks who work down the chain of command. You'll find collaboration and trust and listening and empowered people in an organization led by a servant leader. So you may have heard of Stephen Covey. He's the guy who wrote the Habits of Highly Effective People. He's into it now. He's into servant leadership. In recent years, it's been in the Harvard Business Review that this is a great model for today, and in Forbes magazine as well. Lots of those folks are saying, hey, Mr. Greenleaf has got an idea that we need to take seriously. Servant leadership. So in my mind, I asked Joseph, young Joseph from the Bible, about what he thought about servant leadership. Young Joseph, what do you think about servant leadership? And in my imagination, young Joseph said to me, "Estep, that sounds stupid." Leadership is about power and authority. Servant leadership sounds stupid to me. I want authority and I want to know how to use it. And then in my mind, young Joseph sang a song to me. And it went like this. I like authority, authority always wins. I like authority, authority always wins. I've been doing this since I was a young kid and I come out winning. I like authority and authority always wins. How's that, Rachel?
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, in my imagination, that's how Joseph sang. Long story short, in the book of Genesis, we read that Joseph is daddy's favorite, favored among many siblings, brothers in particular. He was very smart, smartest guy in the room. He was very confident. You might even say arrogant. He was a dreamer, literally. He was very gifted. Joseph had little ability when it comes to self-reflection. He could not see how his attitudes and arrogance and words and behaviors were affecting others. He had no humility. And Joseph's brothers hated him. He had a dream that one day the older brothers would bow down before him. With awe and reverence, they would bow down and they would be subjugated under his authority and his power. And he talked about this. He talked about it openly, shared it widely, and it just drove the brothers nuts. One day, several of the brothers saw an opportunity. Joseph was out alone with them, so they sold him into slavery. Boom! There's the end of King Joseph. So this favorite, smart, gifted, arrogant, power-loving dreamer became a slave. And then after being a slave, he became a man falsely accused of rape, and he was imprisoned for it. And as you continue to read the story of Joseph, the dreamer king, he became a forgotten prisoner. A slave, a prisoner, forgotten. So wait a minute. I thought this was a series of messages about covenant. And I thought a covenant was when God says, I'm going to give you a land, I'm going to give you a family and descendants, I'm going to bless you and I'm going to bless others through you. I'm going to give you a special and significant identity. Oh, and I'll suffer and I'll take the blame when you and your progeny screw it up. So, where is God while all of this is happening to Joseph? Joseph's been forgotten. And where's God? Let me read the passage of Scripture that we'll look at today. This is from Genesis 41. Here's the words. Then Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was hurriedly brought out of the dungeon. When he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh by saying this, it is not I. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile, and 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. Then 7 other cows came up after them, poor, very ugly and thin. Never had I seen such ugly ones in all the land of Egypt. The thin and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had done so, for they were still as ugly as before. And then I awoke. I fell asleep a second time, and I saw in my dream 7 ears of grain, full and good, growing on one stalk. and 7 ears withered and thin and blighted by the east wind sprouting after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. But when I told it to the magicians, there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what God is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, as are the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown it to Pharaoh what he's about to do. Did you notice that in this reading, Joseph says 3 times, God. God will. And then he says twice, God has. God has. Young Joseph used to talk about Joseph. This Joseph talks about God. He sounds a lot more humble. So I need to tell you this. God did not sell Joseph into slavery. God did not throw Joseph into prison on false charges. God did not forget Joseph in prison. In fact, if you keep on reading Genesis, get to chapter 50, verse 20, Joseph is going to look at his brothers right in the face, and he's going to say, you all meant to harm me. In other words, you did this to me. The slavery, the prison, being forgotten. You did this to me. But then he'll say, God intended to do me good. And today I'm able to do good. Quite amazing. Joseph is communicating to us that all this time, God has been fighting for Joseph's heart, mind, and soul. While he's going through all of these difficulties, God is fighting for Joseph's heart, mind, and soul. All of this time, God has been a refuge for Joseph. And all this time, God has been transforming Joseph into a servant leader whose smarts, whose gifts, whose abilities and humility is going to be used to save a bunch of people from famine, including his own family. And all this time, God has been preparing Joseph to move the covenant forward. So I'm asking myself some questions, and I'll ask you as well. Have you become hard under life's troubles? Is it too late for you to become humble? Are you wasting trials and difficulties and failures by becoming hard rather than letting God make you humble? Here's another question I'm thinking about. What's your relationship with power and authority? Remember the younger Joseph? I asked the older Joseph about his relationship to power and authority. And do you know what he said to me? He said to me, "Let me tell you about God and about what God will do." The covenant is not that you and I won't experience injustice, trial, difficulty, treachery, betrayal from people, from life. The covenant is that God will always be fighting for our heart, soul, and mind. That God will always be our refuge. And that if we allow it to happen, God will not waste even the difficulties of life to transform us and to prepare us to be someone whom the world needs right now. Let's think about that.
Best Lord Jesus, ruler of all nations, O thou of God and man the Son. Thee will I cherish, Thee will I honor. Thou my soul's glory, joy and crown. Fair is the sunshine, fair still the moonlight, and all the twinkling starry host. Jesus shines brighter, Jesus shines purer than all the angels heaven can boast.
Folks, I want to say thank you to many people who were humble leaders for us. Last weekend we had a walk for missions, and it looks like we're probably, with the great help of many United Methodist congregations here in Morgantown, it looks like we'll be able to raise about $5,000. That is going to stay, half of it's going to stay here in West Virginia and work through United Methodist mission agencies. There's 7 of them. And then half of it is going to be used by the United Methodist Committee on Relief to help resettle refugees that are coming to the U.S. We think we've got also over 100 hygiene kits that we're going to distribute to some social service agencies here in Morgantown, and folks who need it are going to have them. Thanks for that support. Here's another opportunity for you. Each Thanksgiving, Suncrest works with Scotts Run Settlement House to provide Thanksgiving meals for over 100 families. This year our goal is 110 families. We're a little over halfway to our goal of $8,000 and some odd dollars. If you'd like to help with that, you can find us on Venmo. You can go to our giving center on our website, suncrestumc.org, or there's always 479 Van Voorst Road if you want to mail something. And 110 families will be able to celebrate in grand style Thanksgiving this year. No famine at Thanksgiving for those 110 families. So, thank you, those of you who long to be servant leaders.
Let's sing this last song together, and then we will be out of here. You don't have a job, it don't pay your bills, it won't buy you a home in Beverly Hills. It won't fix your life in 5 easy steps. Ain't the law of the land or the government, but it's all you need. In love, well, hold us together, make us a shelter to weather the storm, and I'll be my brother's keeper, so the whole world will know that we're not alone. It's waiting for you, knocking at your door. In the moment of truth, when your heart hits the floor, and you're on your knees, everybody gonna say now, love will hold us together, make us a shelter to weather the storm, and I'll be my brother's keeper, so the whole world will know that we're not alone. Hey, y'all, go with God. Outside, we'll fellowship. Love you. Bye.